Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, well, so if you haven't heard this before, the poet Coleridge reportedly once said that every single person is either an Aristotelian or a Platonist. He then went on to say that it's pretty much impossible to change from one to the other. No, if you're not the one, then you are the other, and you stay that way. That is your orientation. Okay, so, well, what does it mean to have these two orientations then? Well, here are some basic questions to consider that might help. Okay, so, are you more of a spiritualist or are you more of a materialist? Are you a lover of transcendent metaphysics or are you a lover of scientific empiricism? Are you a lover of mathematics or are you a lover of biology? Are you a lover of the firmament of the universe or of particular concrete facts? Are you more intuitional and suggestive or are you more precise and exact? Do you tend to look behind the appearance of things or do you take things for what they are? Do you take a more abstract view of reality or do you take an everyday common sense view? Do you like to speculate? Or do you like to collect and classify and categorize the world as it appears to you? Okay, well, depending on your answers to these sorts of questions, it turns out then that, as Coleridge said, you're likely either a Platonist or an Aristotelian. In other words, you either have Plato's orientation and outlook, or you have Aristotle's. Okay, well, so what are some of the important personal differences between these two great thinkers? Just how are they different, both in character and in outlook? Well, they're different in lots of ways, of course, but let me start with an obvious difference. It's this. It's that it's pretty obvious that Plato is more of a dramatist and poet-philosopher than Aristotle is. I mean, Plato writes dialogues, not essays. And these dialogues, well, they're full of wonderful imagery and they're full of myths and the language is melodious and there's playful humor there and there's irony. I mean, the middle dialogues in particular, like the Symposium, for example, are some of the most accomplished masterpieces in the history of literature. But Aristotle, well, few would say that he's producing literature like that or that he's poetical like that. No, if Plato is the poet-philosopher, then Aristotle is more like the science philosopher. He's somebody who aims at nothing but precision and exactitude of thought and language. And what's more, he's someone who has the rare gift for observation. But I guess the basic point here is that there's an artfulness and an intensity and an emotionality in Plato's writings, whereas in Aristotle, everything is pretty much presented and analyzed dispassionately and scientifically. Okay, well, so what else? What are some other differences between them? Well, here's a very small list in no particular order of importance. So first of all, while Aristotle wants to, as he says, preserve the appearances, that's to say, well, he wants to begin with everyday opinions and not stray too far from them, I think it's safe to say that Plato is much more speculative and even disruptive and revolutionary. I mean, just think about his ideal city, for example, the Republic, and how radical things seem to get there. Secondly, while for Plato the soul is something immaterial and eternal and divine, according to Aristotle, the soul is a composite living organism which dies when the body dies. And third, while for Plato we become good people by exemplifying or approximating a higher metaphysical ideal, the form of the good, as he calls it, according to Aristotle, there are no such forms. And if there are, they're totally useless for morality. In other words, the point is that there's no otherworldliness about Aristotle's conception of human goodness, like there is in Plato. Actually, you know what? This idea of otherworldliness should be stressed a bit more because it's a fundamental difference in outlook between them. Actually, there's a great painting or fresco called School of Athens by the Italian Renaissance painter Raphael, which depicts this key difference between them. What it is it's a painting of a congregation of philosophers with Plato and Aristotle in the middle of all of them. Now, what the two great thinkers are doing is they're talking to each other. But while doing so, Plato is gesturing up towards the sky, while Aristotle is pointing down to the ground. Well, this is intentional on Raphael's part, of course. What he's showing is their two respective orientations or outlooks on reality. You see, if it's not already clear by now, Plato's orientation is one of looking upwards to a higher reality beyond. And Aristotle is one of looking down at this world such as it is. Essentially, Plato has a two-world view and Aristotle a one-world one. That's to say, Plato envisions another reality, an eternal one, beyond this changing and so inferior world down here. But Aristotle, well, he's no stargazer. He's got both his feet firmly planted on the ground, this ground. For him, there's only one world, the world that we perceive with our senses, the one filled with rocks and plants and animals, and importantly, change. To posit some higher reality for him is just, well, as he says, empty words and poetic metaphor. No, Aristotle, being the keen biologist and great circumnavigator of this entire earth, he stays committed to the things of this world. In fact, so great and so wide was his knowledge of all things down here that Dante would later refer to him simply as the master of those who know. But to be fair, if Aristotle was the master of those who know, then Plato, that great idealist, was ultimately the master of those who dream. Bye for now.